Grab a cup of joe, buckle up, and let's embark on a journey of self-discovery, creativity, and entrepreneurship. Let's get rolling.
Well, you know what time it is. It's another mixed media episode. And I can tell you, based on the previous 7 minutes I've just experienced, I have no idea what is about to happen. So here is the warning. So I don't know if my video editor can do something cool with this, but I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be fun. And we're going to have some laughs. We might cry. I don't know. That's for you, the listener, to decide. And, you know, if you're watching, wow, hold on tight, folks, because who knows what's about to happen. So Nell and I were having this conversation, and, you know, we're talking about this creative space all of the time, right? Mixed media. Media can mean so many things, and we never really know what it means, but here we are trying to have some thoughts around it at least. And I know a couple times ago we were talking about like releasing stuff and doing stuff and like what does that feel like and the anxiety. And today we're going to legitimately talk about like how do you actually promote the shit that you're doing? Like what do you actually do? And I don't know that this is going to be your 10 steps to a successful fill in the blank. Although it could turn into that, or maybe if you listen to it long enough and enough times, you'll find 10 good things. I don't know. But, you know, when I think about promoting things, I feel like every piece of media that you or I are working on, it's like it takes on a life of its own.
It definitely does. And honestly, it should. So, you know, it's funny you mentioned laugh or cry. You know, I've done all of those things so far this week, and it's only Tuesday.
Wow, you're hitting it hard this week. Hopefully your week tapers like my week's taper.
Yeah, you know, I'm looking forward to some days ahead, but you know, this is all honestly all of the emotions and everything that I've personally experienced this week have honestly had a lot to do with promoting the shit that I'm doing. And it's really hard for some people to even just grasp the concept of promotion. And what does that mean? Does that mean I have to be everywhere, put myself out there everywhere and for all the places and for all the people to see? Not necessarily. I mean, there's strategy behind it too, but I mean, step number one is actually announce what you're doing. Fill in, like you said, fill in the blank.
Right. Whatever that is, right? Like, hey, I'm going to do this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think in some real simple, like caveman type terms, it's like, hey, I'm doing a thing. Hey, watch me do this thing. Hey, remember that thing I told you about? It's about here.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing I was doing, it's here.
Yeah.
Oh, remember that thing that is here? Can you please go check it out?
Yeah. I think a lot of times too. It's you know, it's interesting because I'm thinking about all of these things. And I'm thinking a lot about music artists because that's that's who the space that you're in and the space that I'm starting to find myself in a little bit more, and how different some artists are in regards to promoting their work. So let's say they have a song coming out. I know artists that don't say anything on social media. They do nothing. I might be looking at one of them. But and then there are others that there's not a time that you're logging onto social media without seeing anything about it. But I think a lot of it also has to do with how we are programmed ourselves. You know, I grew up thinking, you know, it's not understanding that it's not all about me. And that's how I was taught. And, you know, you are equal to other people. And to me, in a way, promoting myself almost seemed like bragging, or like, why should people pay attention to what I'm doing when someone else is out there doing it better? So all these thoughts run through your head. But I mean, a culmination of all of that is, honestly, if you want to be successful, you have to put your projects and yourself out there. That's like bottom line.
So you took that in a completely different way than I thought you were going, which was
Oh,
awesome.
okay. I'd love to know where you thought I was going with that.
I wasn't sure, but like I was like, oh, where's this going? And then like it seems to me, and what I heard from you now was like, you're talking about imposter syndrome. You're like, do I even want to release this? And then,
Oh.
right? And then the fact of promoting it, like, what is that saying about me? Do I even have the value? Should I be promoting? And it's almost like you took it that layered level deeper of like, who am I to be promoting, rather than just should I be promoting, right? Like that's a very subtle difference, but boy, the impact that those two differences have are, I think, are huge.
Yeah. No, you know what? You're right. And honestly, I think I was just spewing words, honestly. And that was just that was coming from a place of, yeah, this is what you're thinking, so here it is. But yeah, I guess it really is imposter syndrome. I didn't think about it that way. But okay, so here's a question. Why you as an artist, why do you not promote songs when they come out?
This is a good question, and honestly, I get it a lot. So I actually have a halfway decent answer, at least to my understanding of it. Is most of the time when I'm releasing music, it's not because I'm promoting myself or my collaborations as artists. Okay. And what do
Yeah.
I mean by that? Because people are like, well, why don't you want people to know about your music?
Right.
It's not that we don't tell people, but we're not promoting it in a manner that like a traditional artist who is trying to tour or book shows or want to play festivals, like the people that I'm collaborating with and we're releasing music, we don't want to play shows. In fact, we probably don't live anywhere near each other. So doing a show like would cost a show a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? So
Sure.
we've just decided that we are releasing music for us to release into the world, and hopefully some folks decide to listen to it more than once, and the other project that I have, we're actually producing music for like sync licensing, so like TV and film and advertising, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important for us to be out there and have those folks have access to that music quick and
Sure.
easy in the spaces that they live, like YouTube Music and Spotify. And there's some specific ones to the sync industry where you have to be.
Yep.
And so it's not so much about the promoting. And part of that is sometimes if you get promoted too much and it gets to be too big, they might not want to use you because they might think or perceive that it would cost them more money to have access to that song.
Ooh, that's a really good point.
So let me give you, so a lot of times in the sync world, we get what are called briefs,
Mhm.
and they want a song that's like this. They'll give you 3 or 4 different reference tracks, like roundabout ideas of what they're looking for, because they don't want to use those reference tracks because, using a mainstream artist track might cost them $1 million, but for us to create it and use something in its not really in its likeness, but with elements of it,
Mhm.
might cost them 10,000 or 20,000. Well,
Mm.
on a movie budget, when there's a minimum of like 40 to 50 tracks, that's a big budget. And
Sure.
it's always last, and it's always the last thing they think about, and the last piece of the puzzle, which is crazy to all of us musicians who live in that space.
Yeah.
However, that's why you don't see, even though I release a minimum of one song a month,
Mhm.
you don't see that as often. And that's a big reason why. However, if someone says, do you got a lot of songs? I could go, yeah, go to these 3 pages and there's a couple hundred. So, and I do a little bit more promoting if it's something that I personally release. But the music space that I live in, for me, myself personally, it's mostly instrumental. And so not a lot of lyrics. And so it's not really for everybody necessarily. And
Sure.
I just happen to have some really good friends that have some really cool radio shows that support independent artists that I get graced with some radio play sometimes, which is I'm grateful for that, because for me, because I don't promote a lot, that's an opportunity for folks to hear my music.
Yeah, Absolutely. So, okay, so what I'm hearing here is number one, there is strategy behind the promotion.
Mhm.
Number two, I don't think anytime soon we're going to be getting a Jeremy Schreifel's vocal track on a song. That's
Nobody
also what I
wants to hear
heard.
that joyful noise.
I think it's important to note that not all instrumentalists are vocalists, and not all vocalists are instrumentalists.
Amen. Like, louder for the people in back, please.
Yeah, I think it's people just assume that so often that, oh, because you sing, you play many instruments so well, and just because you play many instruments, it means you can sing. Definitely not the case. But anyway, off track.
No, that's right on track, actually.
So the strategy behind the promotion explains a lot.
Mhm.
And I think with social media, there's so much less control over
Mhm.
what happens when we do promote things. So if you put something out there and someone shares it, or people see it and they like it so much, and it once it's out of your hands, it's out of your control.
Yep.
So there's a lot to be said for strategically planning how to promote something.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and I watch, like, there's some bands that have been, like, not touring and out in mainstream for a long time that are releasing new albums
Yeah.
and going on tour.
Mhm.
Um because album sales, CD sales are not there. That's a thing of the past, unless you're going to live shows, and even then, like, it's really hard to
Mhm.
make money on that. Touring
Yeah.
acts, you want to know what they really make money on? Merch,
I was going to
t-shirts,
say merch,
hoodies,
right?
hats, all of that stuff. That's where they make money. That's like the
Yeah.
real money.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also
and
why it's
so,
$50 for a t-shirt at a Green Day concert.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You don't want to know what that cost them.
No, probably not. Yeah, no, I that makes a lot of sense. And for those that might be listening that are maybe born in the 90s,
Mhm.
CD stands for compact disc. Just an FYI. Thought it might be important to mention that, considering, we have maybe a generation of listeners that know iPods, and that's as far back as they go.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I guess I forget that sometimes. Like, I still have
Yeah.
cassette tapes.
Yeah, but it's interesting because that time was just a short time ago,
Uh-huh.
and promoting what you're doing was very different
So
because
different.
we
Yeah.
didn't have social media. So, in regards to how we promote things, I know I do a lot on social media. I do email newsletters. How do you prefer to promote things?
Actually, my favorite way is word of mouth.
Hmm.
Like, that, it's my absolute favorite. At the conference I was at the last couple days, I was talking to someone who I had never met before, and just introduced myself, and we were talking, and this person's like, "Oh no, I know who you are," and I'm like, "Oh really? Tell me more." Like,
Hmm.
how did, right? Oh well, I mean, you do trainings and workshops. I've heard about you in all sorts of spaces. Like, your name comes up as a presenter all the time. I'm like, "Oh, that's really great feedback. I've never heard that before."
Yeah.
Right? So that's the word of mouth piece and that
Yeah.
networking piece that I really love. It's what
Hmm.
I'm good at. Um, because I'm not the big shout it out loud. I don't do Facebook lives. In fact, all of you who have been on any part of this journey for this podcast know the reason this podcast exists was because I didn't want to go on video. And
Yeah.
so here we are. Like, we're breaking down that fear and demystifying that you can't do it. And maybe 2025 is a year for me to do something a little different like that, in a live space or more video, to talk about some more of those things, especially as, I don't know what the last week has done for me, but, like, I'm in a creative, like, zen right now, which is not a space I've been in like, legitimately in months.
Oh, that's great.
So watch out if you're in my space, because there's a
You
lot
might
of
see
stuff.
some promotion.
There's a lot of stuff coming. But other than that, I just, I try to use spaces as the best I understand them in terms of social media. I
Mhm.
don't I prefer not to put a lot of dollars into those spaces. I try to just be thoughtful and clever and use things that I know to work, like educating. So talking about the process, let the people be included in the journey of the process and the making of it, because people like that behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah, they do.
I think you did a really good job recently on even the development of your website, just saying, hey, this is coming, and hey, it looks kind of messy right now, but hey, I can promise you that was a message you delivered. Obviously I heard it because I could retell it to you.
Right.
And so that is working. And so for me, I prefer to do it that way. Is it the best way? I don't know. I think the best way is two things. One, what works for you. Two, what you're willing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
That's
if you
really
have both of
important.
those, then I think you're going to be successful in promoting for you, whatever that
Yeah.
means.
I'm so glad that you mentioned how you feel you should appropriately promote things, because it is the exact opposite of how I like to promote things. And I don't know what that means, but I think it definitely has a lot to do with stemming from that imposter syndrome, because
Mm,
for me, word of mouth feels very personal to me, almost too personal, to the
mm,
point where I am embarrassed
oh,
by promoting myself. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, it's really hard for me to say, hey, I have this workshop coming up, or I'm redoing this website, or I have this podcast episode coming out. You should listen. I would rather sing it from the rooftops to a whole mass of people than one, two, or three people in front of me.
that's interesting.
That's very interesting. Oh my gosh. Okay. But yeah, no, it's like the complete opposite. And I think that just comes from probably some sort of, I don't know if I want to call it childhood upbringing or something, some way that we're wired
Mm,
plays a part in how we promote things, or whether we do or not, because there are some people that are so shy and so inward that they won't say anything to anyone or put anything out anywhere. And maybe that stems from some sort of wiring. I don't know.
what I would be curious about in that, and because I hear that, is that intentional on their behalf? Like, are they intentional? Like, I just I do my art for me, or I do,
Mm,
my creative outlet is for me,
mhm,
and I don't need to share with the world. And if some folks find out, great. If they don't find out, great. Or is it
mhm.
truly kind of what I think you're alluding to a little bit? Like, it's that fear, and like, I don't want to, and am I good enough? And like all of those imposter syndrome, like just like what I would call a feedback loop. You just get stuck in your own brain. And you would never allow yourself a moment to pause. Now,
Yeah.
I can tell you from my personal experience, Nell, that you are very good one-on-one and in small groups in terms of sharing, and
Oh, thank you.
and I think you
I'm
do it
trying.
uniquely. And here's how I've seen it successful for you in my minimal interaction of experience with that, is just sharing your passion for what you do,
Yeah.
because you're so darn good at it, and you get excited telling other people about the impact of what those things can do. And that is promoting.
Yeah.
That is promoting. And you're doing it in a way that doesn't feel gross. You're doing it in a way that doesn't make it feel like it's all about me, right? That's called building relationships.
Yeah. That's really important. And you're right. There's something there that's something that personally I'm working on with, trying to promote in that way that doesn't feel gross. And gross is a good word, because it does feel kind of gross, because
Yeah,
there are some people that oversharing is a real thing. Let's be
sure.
real. Oversharing is a real thing. And it's really hard to determine why it's gross for some and why it's not for others. And I think we have to think about that internally. But I look at some people and I see the amount of promotion that has been done, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't hear about this anymore. I can't see this anymore. I gotta mute this person for 30 days or what have you if you're on social media. But and then there are other people where it's like, well, no, I want to hear more about what you're doing. So I don't know. It's a push pull, but and finding the right harmony is challenging.
I like that word.
Yeah. You had mentioned recently that you don't use the word balance, you use harmony.
Yeah.
And I also heard that in a mastermind group that I was in. We had a speaker, and he or she also said we use harmony, not balance, because harmony is making it all work, and balancing is just trying not to teeter one side or the other. So, makes sense.
Yeah. So I had this in one of the conferences I was at in the last 3.5 weeks. Somebody proposed this idea, and they were talking about work-life balance.
Mhm.
But then they flipped it and said life-work balance. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh, that hits different. That
yeah.
hits different. Right? And I'm like, because if our life is in balance, would our work not also be? And then I guess it just identifies, what do we put first? I think that that's really the question that was being asked of the participants that
Yeah,
session, was like, what do you put first? Right?
that
Because
is a
we
great
know what
question.
you put first is what's going to get energy, and what you put last only gets leftovers, right? And nobody wants leftovers,
No,
not unless it's a real good meal. Like, nobody wants leftovers.
that's the only time you want left.
I don't know about that.
No, I do love a leftover. I really do.
So, but you want that, you want that good meal right up front. What does that look like?
Exactly.
What's that feel like? But I'm still in agreement with, I like harmony,
Mhm.
and I'll be curious to see what happens in the future with that language, because I feel like there's a shift coming, and so I'm
Mhm.
curious what that looks like, and I'm curious of how they're going to promote it, and how is it going to get out into the world of the business world. You and I have
Mhm.
been to numbers of masterminds and in groups, and you know there's lots of themes and consistencies, and most of those things are pulled from and personalized from other spaces that those folks have been,
Yeah.
which is what we're supposed to do, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I always think about that, even in music, right? There's only 12 notes, and there's only so many ways to arrange them and put them all together, and the unifying difference is you.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I think it's really, really important to understand that reinventing the wheel is not something that's mandatory. I think the really important piece of everything that we do is not necessarily trying to reinvent or invent a new way. It's literally focusing on your own style, your uniqueness, and infusing that into whatever method you choose to use for promotional purposes or making your music or anything that you do just requires you to be uniquely you and not necessarily reinvent the wheel.
So one thing that I constantly am telling artists and folks who come through my studio, and we're promoting a new song or we're promoting a new album, is, you know, they'll ask me so often, and though I give the same version of the same answer all the time, I'm almost always wondering, am I doing it, and is it falling on ears that aren't really listening to what
Mm,
I'm actually saying?
yeah.
Not because I feel like I know it all, because, like, if you wanted to look at it from a, well, what have you done? Um, I can tell you what I've done. I keep showing up and I keep doing it, right? And because I don't,
Nail on the head.
right? But if you're in a, let's call it a traditional space, so a traditional artist today, we live in what we call a single world, and that means we just release things a single at a time, rather than doing what would be considered a body of work or an album previously,
Hmm.
i.e. the 90s is probably the last time like that was a real big focus.
Mm.
And we've slowly drifted away from that, and so we live in a single world. So if an artist is releasing a couple singles a year, that is a lot.
Yeah.
Think about that. That is a lot. Okay.
Hmm.
But they need to be talking about that thing long before, up until, during, And here's the more important part, and this is where everybody that I'm experienced fails relative word, but fails is they stop after. They don't keep going.
Yes.
They don't keep going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so why did you stop? Well, I have to get ready for the new one. I'm like, well, is this song any less important? Well, no, of course not. I said, okay, so then why did you stop talking about it?
Mhm.
Why do you stop promoting it? Well, because I'm already on to the next one. I'm like, you've missed, right? Think about bank and compound interest. This is the same sort of, this is a parallel to that, right?
Yeah.
If you keep talking about song number 1 while song number 2 comes out, now you have 2 songs to talk about. And if you keep talking about song 1 and 2 while song number 3 comes out, now you have 3 songs. And more importantly, if someone actually likes song 3, which hopefully they do, because you've actually invested in a third song, which most people don't even make it that far, they have something that could catch the eye and ears of brand new listeners. And now 1 and 2, they became brand new again. Because what most folks don't understand about mainstream radio is if a song hits the top 10, if that's a really big if, it has already been out on the radio for a minimum of 6 to 8 months, if not longer. You just didn't hear about it until it hit that top 10, unless you're a grassroots kind of person and you actually listen to those B and C stations that play those things to help build that momentum to get them to the top 10. Right. That's just the way it works.
Yeah, that's why it seems like there are so many overnight successes.
Yeah.
Even though there are not.
Right. And then as an artist hits that success, it's why it takes that a little bit longer for those next songs to come out, because they weren't really sure which single was going to hit. So, that one popped. Okay, now we need to go into the studio fast. And by fast, I mean 3 to 4 months, and get another song out. And 6 to 7 months later, you'll notice there's another song that started up maybe in the B plus stations and hit those A stations faster. And then that's when they can start to do kind of multiple, because then they go in and they stay in and they ride that wave as long as they can until they can't.
Right. Yeah, that's a really important piece of the pie, is to continuously promote that piece. And I'm a big fan of when people do that in YouTube videos and on a much smaller scale. A podcast like this, if you find yourself referencing something that maybe you've talked about before, like the mixed media series, the other episodes that we've done before that, maybe they'll be linked in the show notes, practicing what we preach here. It gives an opportunity. Somebody that has listened to your message before isn't necessarily the same audience that's listening to your message today. Right. So you have the opportunity now that you have someone's attention with what you're currently promoting, you have the opportunity to have a new audience on something else that you've done already, that already exists. That piece should be working for you at this point, whether it's music or a YouTube video or a product that you offer or anything that you've done prior to now should be working for you currently.
In some way, shape, or form,
even if
it's a few at a time, that's okay, right? Like this is our 3rd or 4th mixed media series episode, right? And I've chosen to do a couple different types of series as part of the Rhythm of the Road podcast, because if you gravitate to a theme, you and I have talked about ad nauseum when it comes to especially YouTube videos, how important it is to kind of find that what you let niche market or that small audience. But small isn't very small, right? There's 7 billion people on the internet, folks. You're going to find some people that like it, but you have to wait long enough. And I always tell people, as long as you don't quit, you're going to win. Everybody quits the day before they were going to win every time. So just stop quitting. Stop quitting.
Don't quit. Keep going. There's so many times when you're promoting what you're doing, or you're doing what you're doing, and it seems like nobody's watching. No, excuse me, nobody's watching, nobody's listening, no one's responding, everybody's criticizing, or anything that's going whatever way that you don't want it to go. It's not going to be that way forever, and it's all part of the process. So keep going, don't stop, don't quit, and keep it going. There's another side.
I think when we talk about that, like, you are doing a creative work, and the whole, in my being, the whole idea of doing something creative is that you are sharing a part of you with the world in some sort of way, shape, or form. Whether that's a song, whether that's a video, whether that's a YouTube channel, whether that's a podcast, right? You have multiple podcasts that you're part of, radio, and whatever. That is the point. And so if someone doesn't experience the joy, the passion, and the energy and the creativity inside, you don't want them listening anyway.
No, they're not your audience.
And that's okay. Not everyone's going to like it. Awesome. Because you want to know what? That means there are people who will.
Yeah, you're just making space for them.
You can't have someone who doesn't like it without someone who does. Otherwise, a doesn't exist.
Yeah. The quicker that you can become comfortable with people not liking you, or not liking what you're doing, or not caring about it, or not paying attention, or what have you, the better off you will be in creating capacity for your actual target audience.
Right. And even if that's you working on discovering what that is, I know a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know. I got to figure out my audience, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and I'm going to do this. I'm like, that is going to figure itself out. And some people look at me and they're like, you're crazy, Jeremy. Why don't you have all these other things lined out and laid out? I'm like, well, because that's not how I roll. It's not how I do things. If some of you have worked with me in any sort of capacity, normal isn't in my DNA. I don't like normal. In fact, I ask many people, what is normal and who are they? Because they know everything and they are normal, I don't want to be part of that. And if normal is part of what art is going to become, I also don't want any part of that.
Yeah. I like to tell people, I like to tell people that my target audience is weirdos. I don't know what normal is, and I know that that's not part of who I resonate with and who I'm focusing on and who my audience is. Normal is not in their vocabulary, which I'm okay with that. That's good, because that's not who I am. I'm not normal. Why should anybody that I cater or am trying to reach be normal too?
Yeah. What is that? I think normal is what's normal for you. You know, I mean, I just hung out with 675 mental health practitioners.
I thought you were going to say of your closest friends.
I don't know. Maybe they are, or maybe they will be. I don't know. Some of them are. And, you know, they talk about all the same things we do. And right? They talk about the same things we do. And they struggle with promoting themselves. And how do I do that better? And what does that look like? And we're stuck in like, well, should I promote? What does that actually say? And does that mean I don't have enough business? Does that mean I need more business? Just do it.
Yeah.
Don't care about what people think, because you're going to have naysayers. You're going to have people that don't like it and don't care. Okay, great. Awesome. Next.
Exactly. Next. Don't care about what people think. I know you hear that all the time. It sounds like a broken record. And that's the other piece of it too, is sometimes when you're promoting what you're doing, you think you sound like a broken record, and you don't. And because, like I said earlier, the same people that have heard your message before aren't the same people that are hearing it today. So you have to continuously promote that message so that a different audience or different people from that audience are able to hear it. But so now what I'm hearing you say is that it's not just a creative problem, it's an everyone problem.
It just really is. And more of the experiences that I'm able to have, and through some of the opportunities that are coming into my space, Like I'm having more realizations around that. I think about when I was on the road 140 nights a year, and we were promoting a new album or we were promoting a new single, and we were like, we have played this song hundreds of times, but you want to know what? It was the first time that audience heard it. It was the first time that group of people heard it. And even if there was someone in there that might have run across it one other place, it's still the first time they're hearing it live. So it is our responsibility to give them that opportunity to hear it the best way possible, and hope that you make a few fans out of it so that next time you come back, they bring some friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like so grassroots and so like guerrilla marketing, but it really is the mindset of like, you have to do it like no one else has heard it, even though if you are not sick of your piece of art by the time it has hit whatever space it is going on, a launch or a release or whatever the language is for you, if you are not so sick of it, you didn't do a good enough job. That should be your barometer.
That's a good one. Do you think that Dave Matthews Band gets sick of playing Ants Marching?
No, they don't, because I actually heard an interview with Dave and Carter, and they said no, they don't get sick of playing it.
Oh, so they haven't done their jobs.
Well, I didn't say sick of playing it. It's sick of promoting it. But good catch. Good listening. No, that was good listening.
It's promoting and playing. Yes, two different things for sure.
Because you're still, I think, semi in the creative space when you're actually performing it.
Yeah. I mean, how could you not be? You were in the creative space when you were creating it. What would make you not in the creative space while you're playing it? Because you can always, I guess, there's always ways to revamp and make things better too. There's multiple versions sometimes of songs that come out because somebody had an idea of how to make it better.
Yeah. Well, and think about this. You're an author as well, right? We're both authors. We've had that opportunity of writing a book and putting it together and doing the editing and releasing and launching and whatever you want to call all those pieces and parts, right? I was so sick of my book by the time it released, which is what my publisher told me would happen. And all she said was, you can't stop promoting. You can't stop promoting. And what did I do? I stopped promoting. I was sick of it. And now like I keep going back to it. Like, hey, got to promote the book some more or again, or, and every time I do, there's some little pieces of success. So hallelujah, it does work. You can always go back to it. It's not something that just goes away. But
no,
I definitely hit I'm sick of this. But how long did it take us to form the idea and then form an outline and then actually do the writing and then do the editing and then the back and forth?
Yeah.
Oh, and what, I got to make a cover? Oh, okay. Like, right. It's the whole thing. It's the whole process. And I love it. And, I'm definitely going to do it again more than one time, but it's very similar. It's, whatever your medium is, whatever the work of art you're doing, or really if you're promoting a product or a service, right?
Yeah.
If you're not so sick of it and so pushing it and saying it 100 times, like, then keep going. Keep going.
Absolutely. That is the mic drop moment of the episode, is to keep going.
Just keep going. I mean, if Finding Nemo can do it, so can we.
What a cute little fish.
Don't worry, we won't put any Pixar or Disney links in the episode, because I don't want anybody coming after us for copyright purposes.
No.
But
no,
everything
we'll keep that
else
out
that we've talked today, I know that the amazing team at Enticing Media that is an amazing collaborator with Box 7 is going to make this thing super awesome and amazing, and something you're going to want to come back to, whether you just need a good laugh on a Tuesday afternoon or you found some value in a few of these spots along the way. Thank you, Nell, for being awesome and being really a collaborator and a co-creator of this series, right? You're not a guest, you're a co-creator, and we're doing this together, literally in real time, everyone. So thank you so much for always being a part of it and being a champion. Thank you for all the extra time and effort that you put into it. Thank you all who are listening, watching, and experiencing this journey of the Rhythm of the Road podcast. Any closing words or thoughts from you?
Other than keep going. That's all I
Awesome.
can think of. That's
Well-
all I can think of, because that's all it really comes down to.
And
is
I
to
can
keep
tell all
going.
of you that if you keep going, we will see you down the road.
Thanks for cruising with me on this episode of Rhythm of the Road. Remember, the journey itself is the destination. Until next time, keep the rhythm flowing, and we'll see you down the road.